This administration is shameful. Y'all are a disgrace.
We're watching the fall of this administration.
Yeah, what I think is interesting about this case, this story, is you can be highly legal and unethical at the same time.
It's no secret that Dolton, Illinois, has become a hotspot for local trauma, and the latest showdown between Trustee Kiana Beler and Mayor Tiffany Henyard is giving everyone plenty to talk about. This isn't your typical small-town governance story. It's a full-blown saga of power struggles, accusations, and heated debates. And let's be honest, who doesn't love a little political tea? But as juicy as it gets, at the core of this feud lies a serious issue: accountability. Trustee Kiana Beler has made it her mission to question what many see as a lack of transparency from Mayor Henyard, and things are anything but quiet in Dolton's board meetings.
Tonight in South Holland, in a room filled with curiosity and concern, Tiffany Henyard addressed her constituents.
The Thornton Township Supervisor and Dolton Mayor invited the community to Township Talk, where she responded to our report about her use of the township credit card by mentioning travel expenses.
Let's set the scene. Trustee Kiana Beler, one of the more outspoken members of the board, has been laser-focused on the village's finances, especially when it comes to questionable spending. And then there's Mayor Henyard, whose leadership style has been described as, well, unorthodox. Henyard has faced allegations of mishandling funds, overspending, and even intentionally creating a lack of paper trails to avoid scrutiny. It's the kind of situation that makes you wonder, are these officials working for the people, or are they just playing political chess? During a recent meeting, tensions reached a boiling point when the topic of inauguration expenses came up. The village had apparently footed the bill for Henyard's inauguration, and Beler wasn't about to let it slide without asking some hard questions. Were we at a set dollar amount or no? She asked, her tone sharp but professional. The room fell silent for a moment before the village attorney stepped in to explain that the expenses were considered legal because they fell under a special event fund already budgeted for such occasions. According to the attorney, the expenses didn't require prior board approval as long as no single invoice exceeded $5,000. But that explanation didn't sit well with Beler, who was quick to point out how easily the system could be manipulated. The event's invoices had been strategically split into smaller amounts, each under $5,000, a tactic that allowed the expenses to bypass the need for board approval. When questioned about this, the attorney acknowledged that while individual invoices under $5,000 could be spent without prior approval, the board could still approve them retroactively. The loophole was evident, and Beler was not willing to overlook it. She voted against the motion, maintaining her stance that the process lacked transparency.
I am about to address some things as the supervisor. There will be no comments, there won't be anything. It'll just be me addressing you guys to tell you what's going on.
Henyard, however, defended the practice, insisting that the expenses were within the budget and dismissing Beler's objections as unnecessary drama. She suggested that concerns could have been addressed privately rather than during the public meeting. This preference for handling disputes behind closed doors has been a recurring approach for Henyard, aiming to avoid public scrutiny of internal disagreements. Beler, however, stood firm, emphasizing the importance of open discussion and transparency. She argued that trustees have a responsibility to ask questions and ensure accountability for decisions presented to them. Her statement resonated with the audience, sparking murmurs of agreement and adding to the palpable tension in the room.
Or the administration can adhere to some financial limits. We're not looking to necessarily...
This isn't the first time Henyard has been accused of playing fast and loose with the rules. Critics have pointed to her track record of questionable spending, including tens of thousands of unaccounted for purchases, lavish taxpayer-funded trips, and a history of approving expenses without proper oversight. And let's not forget the ongoing federal investigation into her office. But what really gets people talking is her tendency to dismiss criticism as personal attacks. They talked about Jesus Christ, Henyard once said in a previous meeting, comparing herself to a martyr. Why wouldn't I think they're going to do me the same way? The real issue, however, seems to be Henyard's approach to governance, or lack thereof. For many residents, the inauguration expenses are just the tip of the iceberg. At the heart of the matter is a budget process that feels anything but transparent. During the same meeting, Beler brought up concerns about the overall budget, which had been presented to the trustees without enough time for a thorough review. "We got it at 3:26 p.m., she said, clearly frustrated. The residents haven't even been able to look at it, and now we're expected to make an informed decision? She called for a more detailed, itemized breakdown of the budget, similar to what had been done in past years. But Henyard seemed more interested in pushing the process along than addressing those concerns.
Happening tonight, community concerns in Thornton Township and a push to regulate what some call out-of-control spending by Township Supervisor and Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard.
For longtime observers of Dolton politics, this shift in Henyard's behavior is particularly jarring. When she was a trustee, she was known for her meticulousness. Back then, she insisted on going through every budget line item, questioning even the smallest discrepancies. "Why so low?" she once asked about a budget line for tree trimming. "I understand we're doing cuts, but I get a ton of complaints about trees. I think that amount should stay where it's at." She even advocated for increasing the budget for tree maintenance, highlighting her deep involvement in the details. Fast forward to today, and that same level of scrutiny is nowhere to be found. It's a glaring double standard that hasn't gone unnoticed by her critics. But the drama didn't stop there. The meeting also delved into the village's credit card controversy, a topic that has been swirling for months. The finance director claimed the cards had been canceled last year, but Beler wasn't convinced. If the cards were canceled, why are there still electronic warrant lists showing charges? She asked. The room grew tense as Henyard accused Beler and another trustee of hijacking the village's bank accounts, a claim that Beler quickly refuted with evidence. According to emails from the bank, it was Henyard's own team that had access to the accounts, not the trustees. Once again, the narrative of obstruction and confusion seemed to benefit only one person, Henyard.
Good evening. There were many tense moments in tonight's meeting. At times, Supervisor Tiffany Henyard took on her fellow trustees when it came to money and expenses, even accusing some of them of spreading lies about her.
What's particularly striking about these meetings is the growing disconnect between Henyard and the other trustees. While Beler and her colleagues push for transparency and collaboration, Henyard appears to be doubling down on her authority. She frequently reminds the board that they don't run day-to-day operations, a not-so-subtle way of asserting her control. But this heavy-handed approach has only fueled the perception that she's more interested in consolidating power than serving the people of Dolton. And the people are noticing. Residents have started speaking out, frustrated by the lack of progress and the endless political infighting. The real business isn't being done because of all this nonsense, one resident, Daryl Lathan, told reporters. We need action. Somebody who's actually going to work for the people, not themselves. It's a sentiment echoed by many, especially as the village faces a financial deficit in the millions. Henyard's critics argue that her leadership has only deepened the crisis, pointing to her lavish spending and inability to foster cooperation within the board.
Y'all thought that I was young, dumb, didn't know nothing, was gonna let y'all come and manipulate me. I didn't do any of that. So because I didn't do any of that, you guys started this whole smear campaign.
What makes this saga even more compelling is the sheer audacity of it all. Henyard, who once prided herself on fighting for transparency and accountability, now seems to be doing everything in her power to avoid it. And while Beler's persistence has earned her praise from some, it's also made her a target. Henyard has repeatedly tried to discredit her, accusing her of creating unnecessary drama and undermining the board's unity. But Beler isn't backing down. As the meeting wrapped up, it was clear that the tension between Beler and Henyard isn't going away anytime soon. The two women represent opposing visions for Dolton's future, and their clashes have come to symbolize the deep divisions within the village. For Beler, the fight is about restoring trust and accountability. For Henyard, it's about maintaining control in the face of mounting criticism. And for the people of Dolton, it's yet another chapter in a long and messy story of local politics gone awry. But here's the million-dollar question. Can Dolton survive this leadership crisis, or is the village doomed to repeat the same mistakes? One thing's for sure, this isn't the last we'll hear of Trustee Kiana Beler and Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Stay tuned because the drama is far from over. So here's the thing. When you think the political drama in Dolton, Illinois can't possibly get any messier, somehow it does. Trustee Kiana Beler and Mayor Tiffany Henyard might as well be starring in their own reality show at this point. And honestly, it would be a hit because the sheer level of chaos unfolding in these board meetings is unmatched. But what's really wild is how the conflicts are exposing deeper issues of seemingly unchecked power, financial mismanagement, and the constant battle for control.
Please tell me how you're out of order. You're out of order. How do they operate, trustees?
Let's rewind a bit to one of the more jaw-dropping moments from a recent face-off. It all started when the subject of payroll transparency came up. Now, you'd think that something as straightforward as providing payroll reports to trustees would be a no-brainer, right? Well, not in Dolton. Beler and another trustee, Jason House, revealed that they'd been repeatedly blocked from accessing basic financial documents they needed to make informed decisions. According to Beler, the finance department had outright stated they couldn't release the reports without approval for Henyard. We've been asking for months, Beler said, her frustration palpable. How can we make decisions for this village if we can't see where the money's going? Henyard, of course, denied everything. I've never told anyone not to share payroll reports, she said, her tone dripping with exasperation. Why would I need to approve something like that? That's just not true. But here's the kicker. Beler wasn't buying it, and she came prepared. She pulled up emails showing that the finance director had indeed cited instructions from the mayor as the reason for withholding the reports. The room was silent for a moment, and you could practically hear the collective gasp from the audience. Henyard, however, brushed it off as a misunderstanding, claiming that the finance team must have misinterpreted her directions. Convenient, right?
Will be on the general election ballot despite an attempt to block her candidacy by an ally of current Mayor Tiffany Henyard, who is running for re-election.
But wait, it gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. The clash over payroll access is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Henyard has been accused of creating a culture of secrecy within her administration, and this extends well beyond payroll. Take, for example, the village's credit card scandal. During the same meeting, Beler questioned why the board hadn't received any credit card statements since May of last year. If we're paying these bills, we need to see what we're actually approving, she said. And honestly, she's got a point. How can anyone sign off on expenses they haven't even seen?
Thornton Township Supervisor Tiffany Henyard is finding a way to spend money that trustees say they intentionally did not approve, one describing it to me tonight.
Henyard responded with a mix of deflection and vague explanations, asserting that the credit cards had been canceled months earlier and that the village was no longer using them. Beler, however, demanded evidence, questioning why final statements were not provided and why charges were still appearing on the warrant list. Henyard denied any wrongdoing and accused Beler and House of being overly dramatic and creating unnecessary controversy. Later, emails from the bank revealed that Henyard's team still had full access to the accounts, directly contradicting her statements. The situation resembled a plot twist in a thriller, except it was real life, with the taxpayers of Dolton caught in the middle.
Well, she's one of the most recognizable faces that's been on the news lately. I'm talking about the mayor of Dolton, Tiffany Henyard.
And all of social media.
Yes,
She's
yes.
everywhere.
And speaking of taxpayers, let's talk about the bigger picture here. Dolton is currently facing a financial crisis with a deficit running into the millions. Yet, instead of focusing on solutions, the board seems to spend most of its time locked in these endless power struggles. Residents are understandably fed up. We're the ones who suffer while they argue over nonsense, one voter said after the meeting. How about they actually fix something for once? It's a sentiment that many in the community share, especially as the village's financial woes continue to worsen. Henyard's administration has faced severe criticism for alleged misuse of public funds on personal luxuries. Reports suggest that tens of thousands of dollars have been spent on questionable items, such as frivolous Amazon purchases, as described by one trustee. In addition, her inauguration expenses, which Henyard claims were intended for the people, are widely viewed as extravagant and self-serving. Many residents have expressed frustration, with some equating the misuse of funds to treating the village's finances as a personal piggy bank.
It's a little bit of both. A little bit of both.
Wow.
Let's talk about the title of this, because it's called Super Mayor, and that is what Tiffany Henyard calls herself?
Despite these allegations, Henyard has dismissed the criticism as a smear campaign orchestrated by her political opponents. She has framed the attacks as a reaction to her position as a strong woman in power, claiming it is an attempt to undermine her authority. However, this narrative is challenged by the fact that many of her critics, such as Beler, are also women who have been vocal about demanding accountability. Beler's approach contrasts sharply with Henyard's. Known for her commitment to transparency, Beler has consistently asked difficult questions and shown a willingness to confront the mayor, even at the risk of political repercussions. Her determination has earned her widespread support from Dolton residents, who are eager for change, with some praising her as one of the few genuinely fighting for the community's interests.
Has this surprised you, how much the viewership has gravitated towards this woman? Like, people from all over the world are talking.
Nevertheless, Henyard continues to have a base of loyal supporters who see her as a groundbreaking leader facing unfair opposition. At a recent public event, a supporter described her as a trailblazer targeted for challenging the status quo. While her tenure has included initiatives to improve Dolton's infrastructure, critics argue that these efforts have been overshadowed by controversies surrounding her administration. One of the most telling moments in this ongoing saga came toward the end of the meeting when Beler delivered a scathing critique of Henyard's leadership. "This isn't about personal attacks," she said. "This is about doing what's right for the people of Dolton. We're not here to serve ourselves. We're here to serve them." Her words were met with applause from the audience, but Henyard looked unfazed. "I'm doing my job," she shot back. "Maybe you should focus on doing yours." And that right there sums up the entire dynamic between these two women. On one side, you have Beler, the relentless watchdog who refuses to back down. On the other, you have Henyard, the embattled mayor who sees every critique as a threat to her authority. It's a battle of wills, and neither seems willing to concede an inch. The question is, how much longer can this go on before Dolton itself starts to crumble under the weight of their conflict? As the meeting adjourned, the tension in the room was palpable. But outside, the conversation continued, with residents passionately debating who's really to blame for the village's problems. Some pointed fingers at Henyard, accusing her of corruption and incompetence. Others defended her, arguing that she's being unfairly targeted by a board that refuses to cooperate. And then there were those who just seemed exhausted by the whole thing.
This manipulation, nobody likes being manipulated. And when you get here, you know that's exactly what's happening.
But here's the thing. This isn't just about Dolton. The drama unfolding in this small Illinois village is a microcosm of larger issues plaguing local governments across the country. It's about transparency, accountability, and the delicate balance of power. And while the details may differ, the underlying themes are all too familiar. It's a story of ambition, rivalry, and the struggle to do what's right, even when everything seems stacked against you. As the political storm continues to brew in Dolton, Illinois, one can't help but wonder, is Mayor Tiffany Henyard's leadership style truly benefiting the village, or is it time for a change? And what about Trustee Kiana Beler's relentless pursuit of transparency? Is it a noble cause or a disruptive force? The viewers are encouraged to share their thoughts and insights in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a comment and let everyone know where you stand on this heated debate. Until next time, stay tuned for more updates on this riveting saga.